So here we're putting on these nacelles, and see that little hole and that little hole? Those have been drilled out, and I matched the nacelle up to a little white dot on either strut. There's a little horizontal bar that goes there, and so that's what I'm using to, one of the things I'm using to line this thing up. So I took a little baby drill, drilled out those holes. I'm going to take a piece of stretched sprue, heat stretched sprue, and put it in there. But before I do that, what I'm doing here is just using that hole and that little white dot on the strut as a way I'm adjusting. You can't see it, but I'm trying to adjust the nacelles. Remember, the nacelles right now are free floating. And I'm adjusting them to say, okay, if those dots are in line with the hole, then what does the back end look like, and vice versa. So once I get it about right, I put the nacelles down low, put a little of the white glue on those back areas of the strut, and then I'm pushing the nacelle up into position. And there's some dotted lines to follow, and I also just do it by eyeball to make sure it looks straight, because it should be, at 0 degrees. It should be right in line, the thrust line, I guess, with the tail. I get that in place, and see, I'm just kind of adjusting it. Remember, the nacelles are just there really for show. I mean, they're not doing anything important. Once I got those started, then I do like Neil's paper model does. Neil does on his station, his program, which is his channel, which is a little bit of super glue, and that locks everything in place. If I end up getting a shiny mark there from the super glue, I can go back with some dull coat and just sort of go over it. And here I'm putting a little bit on that side, and then a little shot of zip kicker again, boop. And then all that does is make it so those things are nice and locked. And again, they're not going to do much, but they do hold the propellers in place, and they have to be even. So all this time I'm making sure that they look vertical and horizontal, and from the top and from the bottom, so everything looks pretty dang good. Putting some more glue on those pieces, and that's going to be plenty to lock these things in place. They're really just paper shells. Remember, if you go back and look at how we built them, they're really just paper shells with holes in them. So here it is, locked in place. The cells are together, and now I have made it. Oh, that's Gene. You can't see because of the propeller. But over here, there's a little hole there, and it matches up to the little white dot. So now I'm going to put those two pieces in. And again, I took stretched sprue, and there's some stretched sprue I took from an old plastic kit, heat pulled it, and that's about the diameter. There is paper, our paper parts that are associated with it, but I'm doing this. I cut it a little long, because what I can do is stick it one end with some glue into the hole, and I got lots of wiggle room. I don't have to cut it exactly. I'm all for making things simple. And so I put a blob of my white glue, because that'll give me time to maneuver it. It won't dry instantaneously or something like that. And I basically stick it in the hole on whatever side I'm working on and slide it in place. And then once it's slid in place, all I have to do is match it up to the hole, or to that little white dot. And when there's extra glue, that's okay. All I got to do is take a little bit of that off. I took my kind of duller, I always have a dull blade and a sharpish one. And the sharpest one I use for cutting, and the dull one I can use for doing stuff like this. And also for maybe even, pinpoint putting super glue down. Once that's together though, I'm just going to sort of take my tweezers and just make sure it looks good. So I line it up where the white dot is, and I take the time to look at it and make sure from the vertical it looks good. Excuse me, and from head on it looks good. When it's right, I put some glue on the end of it, grab my tweezers, and match it up. And all this time the white glue is not set yet, but it will be when it's all said and done. And there you go. And when I look at that, I make sure that it's horizontal. It's supposed to be in line. And here I'm just adjusting it a little bit here and there, just to make it by eye to look pretty good. It's not a fuel line or anything. It's actually something that I guess is used to hold the nacelle on there. When I have it the way I want it, a little bit of zip kicker, and in you go. Other sides, absolutely identical. A little glue, put it in the hole. It's amazing when you test fit them how the pieces go in the hole, no problem. But then once you put glue on them and you're filming them, suddenly they won't go. But it's the same process. get off a little excess glue if there is any, and then line up the other side, put some super glue with it, thick super glue, and let it go. Remember too, even if you leave some glue blobs, they don't look beautiful, but they're going to dry pretty clear, and your eye is not going to go directly to them. So if you're not absolutely fastidious about getting rid of every little bit of glue, you know, if it's a contest model, maybe, but if you're doing it for yourself and you're going to enjoy the model for itself, you're not worried, you just want to have a pretty model to look at, you know, you don't have to go absolutely DEFCON 5 crazy on these. A little bit of super glue, and then my tweezers, and then guide that in place, making sure again that it lines up and looks good and straight. And this is a repeat of the other side, but it's good to show it. Sometimes it's hard when I'm taking the videos to know if there's a better series of pictures or not, or a little bit of the movie. So I tend to keep both in, and that way people can take a look. Plus it's reinforces a little bit. You do it again. A little bit of the zip kicker, and then that sucker's in there. And there they are. You can see there that one is horizontal. And then if it doesn't look quite horizontal, parts is because my front cowling is actually skewed a little bit. I did the other side previously to make sure it would work, and it's got one of those on either side. And the only thing I got to do with those now, I'm just saying that now the nacelles are strong. They're in there nice and solid. Looks nice. Now, there are two big struts that are faired, and that's what the piece of paper looks like, that goes in between the nacelle and the fuselage with that big round white part. And you can see this is shaped, and I didn't do anything special. I just did it as the model shows. But if you cut it out carefully, it'll come to this perfect shape that will fit real nicely right up on that fuselage and then up against the nacelle. Now, the nacelles, when I made them, I cut the nacelle part out. There's a little hole there. And I think that was something I shouldn't have done. I have a feeling that this was just supposed to butt join up against there. In my case, it doesn't matter, but there's a hole there, that teardrop-shaped hole behind those instruments right there. And I think that's actually not supposed to be a hole. It's supposed to just be something that's flat. And I think I just made a mistake. But you can see it fits. So now I've put some glue on either end, just some white glue. And I slide up into that, against that hole, and then I just drop it carefully right on there. Fits like an absolute charm. And then just let it dry. Make sure a lot of the white isn't showing. And it's, from what I can tell, it's supposed to be canted back slightly, so not parallel with the leading edge. But then it's supposed to also be going up to the engine nacelle if you look at it from the front. But that looks fine. Now, because I usually don't show these things, I'm going to show forming this. Now I sped it up a lot, but I folded that tab over, and now I got to shape this into that little teardrop. And it just is a matter of rolling this in your hand, or like I use those mats that my wife has for doing her knitting. And you just basically small and smaller pieces and roll them. The idea is if you just put it over without having support and rolled it and preformed the paper, you're going to end up with kinks. You don't want that. Once you get it so that it looks pretty good, then you can go ahead and add glue to that tab, and I just add glue to an end, and then I just crimp it with tweezers, and I just slowly work my way down. I wasn't going to show this, but I noticed that when I'm making these, I'm having fun making them, but then I tend to gloss over a few things, and so I figured I should at least show people how to do this, even though it is self-explanatory. But seeing someone else do it, maybe it wouldn't surprise you when you have to do it. Squeeze that, hold it for a little while so that the glue starts to set, and then I just work my way up a whole length. And that's why I'm speeding this up. I'm just putting it a little bit at a time. I can't do them all at once, the whole length, because that usually spells disaster, at least for me. Any extra squeezes out, you get rid of it. And there's the piece, and then I put in something to sort of maybe reshape the shape a little bit. A little piece of this is a round file. Just something to make sure I don't want any kinks in there, and I want the shape to look good. But there's the other fairing. It looks great. Now, and it fit beautifully. However, we're going to notice in this case it's short. So up against the fuselage is a great fit, but when I put it up against the nacelle, I've got like, heavens, 1/8 of an inch or so that it's short. That is not the kit part. That is just showing that the fuselage isn't probably perfectly square. I mean, 1/8 of an inch is easy to miss. The fuselage could be not square. The nacelle maybe isn't right in the exact right place. So what I did was I rolled some paper and glued on the end and just extended it and then painted it. That will look just fine up against here. It's on the inside there. You hardly will notice it. It's dark underneath the wing. It's going to be fine. So that was no problem to fix that. Rather than try to maneuver the nacelle around or do something strange like that, just make it fit. Make your own part, which is legal. In this case, slid it into that hole again. It was a little bit smaller, so I actually went in the hole, and then I just made sure that the other end hit the fuselage, and they are amazingly symmetrical. Granted, some of that is skill, but a lot of that is just making care with the geometry and how the kit is designed. This is a very well designed kit. My problems with it so far have been mainly fuselage, and they've been my problems. They haven't been anything that's wrong with the kit, although I'd maybe design it a little different. But the actual fit of everything has been pretty exemplary. Now, those are in and drying. So the next thing I'm going to do with this puppy is start to rig part of it. I'm going to rig like the lower part of the nacelles before I put the top center section on. So there's lots of rigging that goes in here, front and back on the lower part. I'm going to put the lower parts on. There's some parts that go between the nacelle strut, inner strut, and the fuselage. Maybe put a couple of these on. The more I put on without that wing, the easier it's going to be to deal with. But here it is. They're strong as can be, so I'm trying to show you that they're tough. That big rod, stabilizing rod, looks kind of cool. I mean, this thing to me almost looks like a big wolf spider or something. It's just weird. I don't know why. When I look at it at this stage, it reminds me of a wolf spider for some reason. Maybe that's because my son wants to be an entomologist. I don't know, but it's a cool looking airplane. I can't wait to rig it, which is what I'll probably do tonight, and then start getting that top wing on. God, that's sweet.